The KZ Zenith is arguably the best KZ single DD IEM that has ever been released, and by quite a long shot. From the early humble beginnings of the DeFi all the way to the behemoth that is the Zenith, I want to talk to you about just how good and how much KZ has improved their single DD formula, but also how well this competes with the very, very competitive sub $60 market. Let's talk about it. Now first, the unboxing experience is something that I actually want to highlight here, because KZ has finally included more than just ear tips in a tiny crampy box. Yes, this time around, they included not only a dedicated holder for the ear tips, but also a freaking case. That's right, it comes with a case now, and that's not something that to be just taken lightly, because this is not very KZ to do. It's just insane. But as for the quality itself, the foam ear tips are not my favorite, and they feel very cheap. And the case does the old do-new kind of opening thing where it's just halfway, and I don't really like it that much. But beggars can't be choosers. It's a really good unboxing experience. And what else is good is the build and fit. I seriously loved how well this is built. It really reminded me of the DeFi with its full metal construction, the tuning switches, and the overall shape. Just really, really comfortable. Although I do have occasional zaps and stuff when it comes to pairing this with a more powerful amplifier, especially desktop amplifiers. But if you use this with portable sources, you're not going to have any issues whatsoever. And for the cable, yeah, it's the same KZ cable, nothing new to talk about. But what there is new to talk about is just how it sounds. And as for how it sounds, this is basically KZ neutral. I cannot think of an IEM or tuning that is more neutral for KZ than this. And taking a look at the graph of the Zenith, it is just absolutely beautiful. It's a fantastic curved sloped base that isn't too tucked but is also decently well bodied. The mids, or the main mids, are not overly dipped, which is not very KZ like. Slightly a little edgy on the upper treble, at least with that 8K, but the upper mids is very, very well controlled. Not more than 10 dB of emphasis, and I seriously love it. And the treble, perfectly fine, perfectly decent extension. And now let's finally talk about my listening experience, because I genuinely seriously enjoyed listening to the Zenith, but I'm also aware that this isn't really the most perfect sounding IEM in the market, and I'm going to explain to you why. First and foremost, I mostly listen to my favorite album of 2024, or OPM album of 2024, which is Time and Pace by Flu, and it is just an amazing album. It plays through such a nice way on the Zenith because of its neutral, or like neutral sound signature, as it just perfectly presents all of the sounds or the soundscapes of the album, especially on a track like Disco Miscommunication, with its really thick, thumpy and textured bass being just so nicely presented on the Zenith. And I seriously loved how it sounded on this album. The mids, perfectly clean, not overly bodied but also not overly lean, just right to my ears. Now, the issue that I have here, and I'm going to mention another album called The New Sound by Jordy Greep. It is a very complex album, and the Zenith is just barely getting by. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, because again, this is not only a sub $100 IEM, but it's also a single DD, so I don't really expect it to be that competent in terms of technicalities. However, I do still think that the treble region at least is a bit of an edgy beast right there sometimes. It's something that a lot of KZ IEMs have been suffering for quite some time, but for the most part, it's not really too intrusive. The upper mids somewhat mask it in a nice way, and I would say that unless you're super sensitive to treble, this is a very, very well-tuned KZ. Now, why do I think you might not want to buy this? Probably, I guess, it's not that much of a fun IEM. Like, honestly, it's not really something that I would pick to enjoy a high octane, high adrenaline listening session, really bumpy, pumpy kind of tracks. It's not what I would first pick. This is something that I would pair, say, if I'm just chilling, listening to maybe some Leve or Time and Pace, like I've mentioned here, and just enjoy the soundscape, enjoy the experience, and not really be distracted with all the details and all of those fancy audiophile terms. This is just an IEM that works with a lot of genres, especially with those tuning switches. And speaking of those tuning switches, I don't know why they still add these, to be honest. It barely makes any difference. Barely. Maybe if you really crank up your hearing, you will hear like a very stark difference in the bass and the upper mids and the treble. But in my experience, the bass is going to be increased depending on your mode or decreased, but not that I would justify having tuning switches. I would be completely fine if in any of the modes they just left the KZ Zenith as it is, and I would have been completely fine with that. But hey, if you like tuning switches, I guess this is the one for you. So now let's finally move on to the comparisons, which recorded OB will take over because it's going to be a lot. So compared to KZ D-Fi, the D-Fi is essentially the prototype of the Zenith, and the Zenith is the best of the best that KZ has to offer for single DD. Better everything from unboxing to sound. The D-Fi does sound a little warmer than the Zenith, but the Zenith is overall more capable, more refined, and smoother. Compared to the SimGot EW200, the EW200 still beats the Zenith in terms of technicalities, but the Zenith has better timbre and smoothness in the overall sound. Tactility is better defined on the EW200 with a snappier transient response, while the Zenith has a smoother and overall less offensive sound overall. Compared to the EPZ Q5 Pro, it's basically the same as the EW200 in terms of its pros and cons, but the Q5 Pros lean towards being a much brighter and crispier sounding IEM, making it better for treble heads and worse for treble sensitives. The Zenith is worse in terms of technicalities, but it is considerably safer to recommend for me. Compared to the EPZ Q1 Pro, the only thing that the Q1 Pro is better at than the Zenith is fit. From tuning to technicalities and overall refinement, the Zenith is a better IEM. The Zenith has better note weight, better smoothness, and interestingly enough, better technicalities. Compared to the Keyfine Clean, the Clean is a much warmer, lusher, and bassier set with an overall more immersive sound. The Zenith is more neutral in comparison, but the Clean suffers from the 8K peak much worse than the Zenith. They are on par technicalities-wise, but the Zenith is a more neutral sounding IEM. Compared to the Truthier Zero Red, the Red is a smoother, more relaxed, but less detailed and technical sounding IEM compared to the Zenith. The Red has a better timbre and handles the treble just a little bit better, but the Zenith has a far more engaging sound overall. Compared to the SimGot EW300 on the silver nozzle on 3.5mm analog, the EW300 has a far more capable, smoother, and richer overall sound compared to the Zenith, despite basically having the same frequency response graph. This goes to show that despite graphs showing a lot of the sound qualities of an IEM, it cannot 100% replicate the sound on each IEMs. The Zenith does have a more consistent overall sound, but the EW300 is an overall more capable and nuanced IEM. And to finally conclude, this is the end-all be-all single DD-KZ IEM that has ever been released. Until the next single DD has been released. But jokes aside, this is genuinely a solid step forward for KZ in developing their single DD IEMs, and it's just a really good IEM. Very versatile, very well made, and really nice sounding for most genres. Not the most exciting or technical or maybe even smoothest, but this is a solid IEM overall. And if they finally decide to include a nicer cable, then this might actually be just the best value IEM ever. But until then, just a really good IEM, and I really wish that they did. I really wish that they did include those, because as a whole set, this is just a really good IEM, and because of that, as it stands, it has a total score of 6.72 and an enjoyment score of 8. And this lands on the BAM OB approved, but I don't know where BAM OB is, so let's just Photoshop BAM OB here somewhere, or maybe I don't, or I don't know, but it's a BAM OB approved IEM. Not quite for the panda to come out, but one that deserves some recognition. So thank you so much for watching my review on the KZ Zenith. If you like this video, consider giving me a like. If you want to see more of my content, consider subscribing. Check out the Discord, join Audio Notions. That's not what the order is, but you know what I mean. Obodio out.